adjust this?
Yeah, do whatever you want.
Just bring it down.
Yeah, do whatever you want.
Right there.
This is all about you.
All right. I like that. Right there. Perfect. Okay.
So we are back for another installment of Meet the Artist inside of the Tucson Gallery at Proper Shops in downtown Tucson. 300 East Congress, right across from Hotel Congress. And every week we have a chance to talk with a different artist. Some have work in our galleries, some on our online gallery, and others are just amazing people in our community. Today we have someone that fits all three categories. Welcome to the show, Mr. Joe Pagac, rhymes with magic.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people, when they see your name on the murals, they're not exactly sure how to pronounce it. So we always tell them it's Joe Pagac, like magic.
Yeah, that's the way to do it here in America. I just got back from finding some of my old relatives in Slovakia, and they pronounce it Pagache. It's a pastry over there. So
well, there's nothing that rhymes with that. So
no,
we're going to
sure
stick. We'll
go with Pagac.
We'll go with Pagac and magic, and I think that's it's appropriate because people see your work and they're like, man, there's some kind of magic going on there. You've been a Tucson muralist for how long?
I started when I was 24, so it's 18 years I've been doing this full time.
Wow. How do you get, what were you doing before that?
I was a loan officer for a little while.
I did not know that.
An assistant manager at Einstein's Bagels. I worked bussing tables at TGI Fridays.
Were you doing art during this time too? Or
no.
Did you just like, you know what, I'm tired of this bagel. I'm going to go climb on a scaffolding and paint something on the wall. And how do you get from bagels to murals?
So I was in college, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And my sophomore year, I took a drawing 101 class just to kind of fill the space. I needed a full load of credits. And the teacher took me out in the hallway and she was like, wow, you're so good at this. Like, are you an art major? I was like, no. And she was like, you should do it. You should do it for a living. I was like, nobody makes a living as an artist, right? It's like the joke is, what does the artist say to the engineer or whatever? Do you want fries with that? So I was like, really? You think I could make a living at this? And she was like, yeah. So I ended up just switching majors, became an art major. And then when I graduated, I didn't really know what to do with that. So I put an ad in the paper, Artist for Hire. And I think because murals are their own billboards, it's just I started getting more and more mural calls, because I was doing everything at first.
What was your first mural? Do you remember?
I think the first mural I did that was for just a total stranger, it was a fence between a guy's yard and his neighbor's yard. He had me paint an underwater scene. And he had me include naked mermaids on it. And he had me paint the neighbor's side too while she was out of town. And she came home and was like furious and then actually built a wall right against his fence.
Oh my gosh.
But it was a cool mural. And then, it was just like just little jobs, and the more murals I did, the more. Is
the mural still there? Like, can you still kind of see it if you wedge between the fence?
I haven't driven by there. It's in a neighborhood over by where Magic Carpet Golf used to be.
Yeah, we don't want to be too specific with all your fans. They'll start a frenzy over there tearing up the neighborhoods.
Yeah, I don't know. I bet if that guy is still in that house, that mural is still there.
18 years.
18 years. So,
then so you do one, and then someone sees that and like, man, this is pretty cool. Can you do one for me?
Yeah. So it was word of mouth, and then I ended up getting hired by a interior designer. And we were doing a whole bunch of murals up in like fancy houses in the foothills. And so it was a lot of Tuscan scenes and stuff like that. But I did that for a number of years for her. And the condition was she got to sign my work, but I could use it in my portfolio because she already had a big name going.
Okay.
So right off the bat, in my mid 20s, I was already getting these big commissions to paint these Italian murals, and I was getting to paint for 3 weeks and then go to Italy for 2 weeks and then paint for 3 weeks and then go to Mexico. And so it kind of started this lifestyle that I still keep going, where as soon as I've got money in the bank to leave town, I go travel or hike for 5 months or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
And the brief time that I've actually known you've been hiking across the United States. You've flown to Hawaii to see a volcano. You flew somewhere to get involved with a avalanche. You'd make snow angels.
Right. Yeah.
You just got back from Europe, and somewhere in there you decided you're going to walk across Tucson to raise money for the food bank dressed as a hot dog.
Yeah.
And I haven't known you that long.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this was all in the last year, I think. Everything you just listed.
Probably the last 6 months.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's just how I've always kind of lived my life since being an adult is like, as soon as there's money in the bank, I hit the road.
You and I have different definitions of being an adult. I'm just saying. But that's awesome, man. It's fantastic. And then you get to the way you generate your money, I think brings you enjoyment too, right?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, there's some jobs that I love more than others. I think a lot of the bigger scale stuff gets into more feeling like you're doing a construction job. And, sometimes I'm like hanging off a 9-story building on a window washer scaffold and like, 100-degree heat and it's humid and I'm miserable and like afraid for my life, and I'm doing that for weeks. So you get there's some trade-offs, right?
All right. I guess if you do that, you can go to Hawaii.
Yeah.
That seems fair.
I mean, I think it's not as glamorous once you start getting into the really large scale murals. The one I'm working on this week is over at FC Tucson, which is a soccer club. And it's indoors, it's ground level. It's like a nice flat wall.
Oh.
It's air conditioned. It's so nice. And I put on like podcasts and audiobooks while I'm working, or call friends I haven't talked to in a while and just chat while I paint. So those are the dream jobs.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. So if you're a muralist, the advice is to find the indoor ground level air conditioned jobs.
Exactly. The only problem is those ones don't advertise for themselves. It's the scary outdoor ones that keep getting you business.
What's like because you've done, let's be clear, you've done murals all over the United States. You've done Washington, D.C. Where is Joe Pagac art right now?
So I have a whole bunch in Washington, D.C. I've done them in Miami, Las Vegas, L.A., tons of them in Phoenix. I have a whole bunch in Pecos, Texas, weirdly, because it's one of those things where once I did one, they kept bringing me back. So I've gotten around quite a bit.
And does your style remain the same? Like when you look at a Joe Pagac in Tucson, especially with the more recent, last 10 years, there is some element that people would recognize as being Joe Pagac. Does that sort of carry through? Do you have jackalopes riding bicycles in Vegas?
Yeah, there's like the one in Vegas, the big one I did was for Buffalo Exchange. And so there's like buffalo floating on balloons and like helping each other up to, grab clothes out of trees and stuff like that. So some of that carries over. The ones in DC, I don't think you would recognize as mine at all. They're much more realistic. They're, historical people and events and stuff like that. So
I do remember, I don't know how many years ago, but you did that mural of the postal worker, the jazz musician.
Yeah.
And that got like national attention because I remember reading about that in a lot of different newspapers.
Yeah, so that one has gotten a ton of attention. Some of the murals I do, the one here in Tucson actually, with the people and animals riding bicycles that I did in 2017, I see that everywhere when I'm traveling. People use it as just if they're talking about Tucson in a magazine or a news article, that one shows up a lot, which is really cool to see.
Yeah. So then they don't get your permission to do that, right? Because it's a public art,
right? Yeah. As long as you're showing like the surrounding area too. If it's just a street shot, it's fair game.
Right.
And they're not advertising anything besides Tucson.
Gotcha.
But for me, I'm not super litigious or anything anyway. Like I just love having that art go all around the world and knowing that people are excited about it and want to use it to represent the city.
Do you ever reach back out to the drawing teacher that encouraged you? Do you ever?
Yeah, you know what I did? I went back and found her years later, and I was so excited to tell her that I had made a living at it, and she had no idea who I was. But, I mean, she had a lot of students, I'm sure. So,
what?
Yeah.
Aren't you that pastry guy, Pagache? What is that? What is that?
Although I did recently, like 2 years ago, I was on a road trip and I looked up my high school art teacher because I took some art classes before, and I looked her up. She was in Idaho, and she was super excited. We went and got dinner together, and it was really cool to see her and catch up. So
nice.
Yeah, and she still follows me. I think a lot of my art teachers and just regular teachers from earlier life still follow me. I'm friends with them on Facebook and stuff.
So is this is there a retirement plan for muralists? Like, is there a transition? Do you start doing like more traditional canvas art, or are you just always going to be hanging off of roofs.
So I already am working on, I'd really like to get more involved with like the national parks and stuff like that. Cause one of my big loves is just being outdoors and hiking and camping. So in the background, in my evenings, I'm home working on a whole bunch of designs and stuff like that for the national park system. And I'm hoping to start getting that going more. One of my dreams would be to just travel from national park to national park in a van or something, and just while I'm there, work on merchandise and artwork for them, and then travel to the next one. We'll see.
It just combines perfect. Everything just gets combined into one thing. That's perfect.
Totally. So we'll see. That's kind of one of the things I'm pushing for right now. I have a number of kids' books that I've like written and illustrated, but they're just not quite where I want them to be yet.
Oh, wow.
So I even have like printed out hard copies of them, but I just like, they're not quite where I want to put them out in the public. So that's another.
And you said you're writing them, so you're doing the story as well as the illustrations.
And the illustrations. Yeah. And then I also like, on top of everything else I'm doing, I have now like 4 properties that I've bought and fixed up over the years and made all fun and quirky and artsy. So it's kind of like just anything I can do where I'm like creating something with my hands makes me happy. So construction falls into that really well, actually.
And I remember when we were talking originally about the gallery, and one of the goals here was to help up and coming artists get a little bit more knowledge, exposure, and a chance to meet some of the more experienced and seasoned artists. And I was like, what advice would you give to a muralist that's starting out? And you said, don't do it.
Right. No, I mean, I think it's if you've got what it takes to come out, and you have to be good at art, but you've also got to be good at marketing yourself and doing business and doing all the paperwork and stuff like that. Like on a good year, I would say I do painting a third of the time. And the rest of it's like going to meetings and, doing mock-ups and like doing all the tax work and all that stuff. So it's not just painting every day unless you have an agent, but
the tax stuff gets you every time.
Tax stuff. Yeah.
When you're doing these mock-ups, I'm assuming there's a combination, but how often does someone come to you and say, just create us something? Or do they come and say, hey, we want pigs on balloons, or...
It's the full range. I prefer when people have something they want. If someone just says, create me something awesome. I want it awesome. I want it different than anything else you've ever done, but I want it just like your style. That's really hard.
That's where the magic comes in, right? That's where, poof, there you go. Yeah.
And sometimes I just get those like, I'll be laying in bed at night at, 11 o'clock at night. It's like, I've got it. And I got to wake up and, put it down. But sometimes those are hard. And if somebody comes to me and they say, I want a buffalo floating on balloons, I can put that together quick.
So you're some of your ones here in Tucson, like the whales. Was that you, or was that a collaboration?
The whales was me. It was actually, they made me tone it down. Originally, the whales had little saguaro scenes on their backs. They were like little floating islands with birds circling them. And there were scuba divers on bicycles riding on a beach below them and then floating and swimming up to swim with the whales. And they made me tone it down.
Wow.
They were like, that's a little much. So, some of that stuff gets pulled in when you've got corporate sponsorship.
What's the process then? Do you create something on paper? Is it digital? How do you get that exists somewhere? The scuba diving, bicycle riding.
Yeah. So now I do everything on the iPad. I switched over a few years ago. It's just Procreate, which is I think what every single artist out there uses now. But before it was like pencil drawings, and then I'd scan them into the computer and try to manipulate them in Photoshop a little bit, and then go from there. But I have so many mural designs and just art designs in general, that because a lot of times it's like 3 or 4 designs will go to a client and they shoot down 3 of them, and so they're all just sitting there unused and unseen. And then scaling it to a large building. So is it math? How do you do that? It's just a grid. Like geometry was actually a really useful class. Listen up, kids. Geometry. Pay attention. It's not just the art. For all of this stuff, for sculpture and art, and I do a lot of building stuff for Hotel Congress for years, building the taco hands, temples and the taco and the hands and all that. It's all geometry and construction stuff. But it's just a grid. I put a little grid on the on the drawing and then a huge grid on the wall, and I just fill in square by square kind of where stuff's going to go roughly. And then from there, once I kind of know where stuff's going, I just learned the hard way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're up there on the wall and you're like, there's no way a nose is this big. And then so you make it smaller, and then you get down after a couple hours of painting and realize you made it way too small. So I just trust the grid,
the process,
trust the grid, and then
grid.
it gets things to look right in the end.
And some of your projects, there's a sculpture coming, I think, or is it out?
Yeah, it's the sculpture's done. We're just waiting for the install, but it's going right up on the river path between it's like St. Philip's Plaza and the Rito racetrack. So it's a javelina riding a tandem bicycle. It's riding on the front, and you can sit on the back and take photos with it and stuff like that. But it's life size, and it's going to be super cool. It's my first bronze sculpture. I've got a sculpture down in the airport already between the ticket counters that I did all by hand. But this one's had the help of a foundry.
Yeah. So do you have any idea of the release date for that tandem bike?
I don't know. We're hoping to get it in the next week, but we actually almost installed it this week, but there's crazy weather going on and we didn't want to install it while it was snowing. So I think it's going to go in this coming week, but it's going to be, I think we have to let it set up with the concrete and stuff like that. So I think like next month will be the unveiling, and I'll definitely let everyone know about it.
A couple last questions here.
Yeah.
These are just for my benefit, but do you work on multiple projects at the same time, or are you one and then move on to the next?
No, I always have like 10 or 15 projects in the pipeline that I'm in different stages of.
That's why I can never get a hold of you.
Right. Yeah. So there's always like the one or two that I'm currently painting, and then the ones that I'm working on mock-ups for, and then ones I'm going to, initial meetings for, calls, and then it's a constant thing.
And then all these cities where you're putting up murals, is Tucson really as special as I think it is with the amount of muralists we have here? Or is this really something we have across the country and it's just I see it because I'm in Tucson?
No, I think Tucson's got a couple great things. One that I noticed is we have a huge painting season. Like you go anywhere else and it's rainy or it's snowing or it's just not good for painting. So it's really good to paint here because you can paint almost year round. The other thing is Tucson's just super supportive of the arts in general. People like to put their money into it. They like to put the press on it. They like go and take photos with it and support it, with their own pocketbooks if they can. It's a really supportive city. And in general, we also have less vandalism of murals here. I mean, occasionally stuff gets tagged, but compared to a lot of cities, like there's plenty of cities out there that you just can't keep a mural up. People tag over it within days and it's just destroyed. So Tucson's a great place for murals. And I think there's very few cities like that in the country that really are as supportive and have that many muralists. But I think one of the things is that Tucson is drawing them in, and the ones that are coming up are like really getting supported well and can make a living at it. So it makes it easier to.
Yeah, I was thinking of just from the talent standpoint, but without the community support, without the respect, I guess, it doesn't matter how talented you are. If you can't paint because someone's not going to pay you or they're going to tag it or it's going to be snowing.
Right. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So, and I think that's what keeps a lot of the talented people here is, it's supportive. When I graduated college, I was talking to all my classmates and I was like, yeah, what are you guys doing when you graduate? And every single person was going to Los Angeles or New York. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I'm going to stay here. Nobody's staying here. I'm going to see what I can do here if there's no artists here. So
were you born in Tucson as well?
Yeah, I was born in Tucson. Okay. But, and for a number of years, I was one of the only muralists here working. So, slowly as more murals have come up and now there's a huge community, but for a long time I was like the only guy out there that was getting the calls, I think. So it made it easy.
Do you have influences? Do you follow people on Instagram that you look at their stuff, or you just?
I don't. I really I'm not super into social media. And so I go on and post stuff on there. Yeah. But I'm not really into.
I know you'd have time. You don't have to have time.
Right. And if I do waste time on there, it's on Reddit. And I don't know. And I'm not following any art stuff on Reddit either. It's just all garbage. So I try to delete it when I can. Occasionally I'll reinstall it. But
where can people find, what you're posting? What's your Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah. So my website? Instagram, I have Joe Pagac, which is my art stuff. And then Joe Pagac, the person, is all my other stuff I'm up to, my hiking and traveling and stuff like that. The hot dog hike that I'm putting together to raise money for charity.
Let's talk about that. So
sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's first of all, what is this and when is it happening?
So when I was hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, I was doing a lot of wearing costumes while we were hiking. And I jokingly was talking to some of the people I was hiking with about getting hot dog costumes next, and nobody was into it. But I thought when I got home, I would do it. And then I thought, well, if I'm doing that, I should do it for charity and make a spectacle out of it. And then I mentioned it to a number of people, and they were all really into it and wanted to join. So I decided to just turn it into a big thing. So we've got 30 people dressed up as hot dogs hiking from March 15th to the 19th. We're going through the Rincons and the Catalinas. It's going to be about 20 miles a day. So it's going to be brutal. It's going to be a hard hike. And then the hope is to just, make a spectacle and steer people toward donating to the food bank. And so you can go to hotdoghike.com, and then
I'm surprised that URL wasn't taken already.
I know. Yeah. It was a little more expensive than .net or .org, but I paid the extra for it.
Hotdoghike.com.
Hotdoghike.com. So that has all the information about it, and you can donate there. And then my other ones, it's just Joe Pagac or Joe Pagac the person.
Pagac.
Pagac. Yeah. And then you can also just, if you go on Google and type like Joe Muralist Tucson, that'll pull me up and you can find me from there.
Yeah, you go on Google and find yourself with that easy of a search. You're doing something well.
Right, yeah.
Well, Joe, I appreciate it. I appreciate you being a part of the Tucson Gallery. You've been a kind of an anchor to help get this started as well. Your reputation, people, when they see your name, they know it's something of value and something that's good for the art community. So we appreciate you being a part of that. And look forward to kind of what the next projects are going to come out, and can't wait to ride a tandem bike with a javelina.
Yeah. Cool.
That's one of those things that when I was in Ohio, I never thought I would say.
Right. Cool. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And if you want to hear any of our other artist interviews, it's called Meet the Artist. It's on our website, the TucsonGallery.com. We have a new feature each week, and then it's followed up by meet and greet here. So you can come live and hang out with the artist for a couple hours, get a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, chat about process. It's pretty casual and laid back. And then all of these are archived on our website. They'll be on Spotify and other places soon. It's all called Meet the Artist. It's a production of the Tucson Gallery here inside of the Proper Shops, 300 East Congress. And tune in next week to find out some more exciting news from the art world.
All right. Cool.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.